The heating doesn't seem to like bad weather, which is a bit unfortunate obviously in the UK and Scotland. So it's over a month since we got back to Spain, and this is our first trip away in the camper van since then. Now the main reason is we got ill, COVID type stuff. To be honest with you, life through it's a bit of lemon as well, but you know what, we're going down to Campbelltown, the place where we learned to keep your head up, keep your humour and batter on. I mean, check this out, the weather's been awful all the way down. Getting near Campbelltown, 5 miles to Campbelltown, cleared up. So we've driven down from our home in Inverness, down through Oban and then down through the Kintyre peninsula.
Yeah.
It's a 5.5 hour drive, but we really like doing it, don't we?
Yes, it's a lovely drive.
Especially the last sort of 45 minutes looking up into Campbelltown.
Yeah.
And the reason is that every mile's a memory, isn't it?
Yes, aye.
I don't know about you, but I start thinking about the reasons we've come up down this road hundreds of times.
Hundreds of times.
The people we've come up down this road with, you know. Often with our own kids in the car.
Yep.
For all the places we've been, and we've been very, very lucky
Yes.
this last 13 years or so in particular, travelling and the places I've worked, this is the one where I feel
Yes, aye.
happiness, this road and coming to this place, you know. As we've said, Rona, one of the great things about Machrihanish is the bus stops right at the site.
And the bus is just coming.
So bus straight from the gates of the campsite to Campbelltown again. So I'm walking over to the shipyard here, or the site of the old shipyard. But let me say something about 3 things that make Campbelltown unique. And that uniqueness is driven by its location near the bottom end of the Kintyre peninsula here. So I think number 1 for me would be the accent. Now my accent's pretty mixed up, but a true Campbelltonian, their accent is very distinct. You'd recognise it anywhere in the world, and indeed I often have. Now, I read some language expert years ago said that it was a mix of Lowland Scots and Irish. Fairly obvious because of its location. But I would say it's also got, you know, a lot of West Highland in it. It's got that lilt to it as well. So that would be number 1 for me. Now, number 2, I would say, would be the humour. And that's unique as well. It's got a little bit of that sort of Glasgow quick-wittedness about it. It's definitely got a bit of Irish in it as well. But it's also got that gentleness, you know, that west of Scotland gentleness in the humour, that very, very canny, very clever. Often quite self-depreciating, people from Campbelltown, you know. It's a wonderful thing. And number 3, or my number 3 at least, would be that Campbelltown has never been overwhelmed with tourism. They get their fair share, and probably at times I suppose people in Campbelltown do feel they're overwhelmed. But you know, it's not like other places in Scotland now, especially after COVID, where you'd actually have to work quite hard. You'd have to dig quite deep to find that original culture. You really would. In Campbelltown, that culture of hospitality and kindness is everywhere. It's everywhere. Somebody in the comments said, I think, something along the lines of Campbelltown is full of kind-hearted people who'd help you in a heartbeat. And I think that nails it better than I ever could. Now, I know that's kind of gushing, isn't it? But honestly, Rona and I are so grateful that we got to spend 10 years of our lives here. And it was maybe the most important 10 years. It was school days, young adults, first jobs. And I'm so grateful I got to do my apprenticeship here in this shipyard. So yeah, the remnants of the old shipyard. Now, last time I was here, I tried to describe what it looked like a bit as best I could and how the ships were built here. But very briefly, looking from the seaward end this time, in the middle was a slipway where the boats or the vessels were actually assembled 2 at a time on the slipway. On the right-hand side, looking from the sea, was the plate shop where the steel sections and so on and tanks that were going to build the vessel were put together. And on the left-hand side, again looking from the seaside, was the engineering shop where I worked, and tagged onto the side of that was the joiner's shop. Yeah, there's a fair wind blowing, but we'll have a go, eh? So this shipyard was thriving long before I came to be an apprentice here, and it was thriving long after I left. So I'm aware that there's not many people who worked here who would even remember me, but it had a profound effect on me. Everybody in here did, you know. You know, sometimes it was direct advice from these guys. Other times it was just an overheard conversation that I never forgot, you know. So important when you're young, I think, that you have these peers that are kind, decent people, you know, which is what they were, you know. Sometimes it was just watching some of the quieter guys, you know, and the way they went about their business and just going, yeah, that's class. I could do a bit of that, you know. But anyway, I'm kind of nervous about this because I'd like to actually mention a few people, even although everybody here, you know, I remember them, you know. And if you don't mind, I'll use first names. I don't think it's my place to use people's names on YouTube, but I think first names or a nickname would be appropriate. It's only 4 or 5 people, and it's hugely respectful, if you don't mind. I'm nervous about this. So let's do this. The thing is, when I look at this remnants of a shipyard, that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing it as it was. I see the men walking about here and working and laughing and doing their thing, you know. So when I stand at the top of the slipway here, what I remember is towering above me would be the hull of a steel vessel. The keel would have been laid, steel keel would have been laid, you know, some weeks earlier. The steel ribs would have been built in, and the plates would have been pre-formed in the plate shop. Were getting dogged and hammered into shape, final position to get welded out, you know. And what I remember, probably about the 2nd or 3rd year of our apprenticeship, was walking down the slipway here, and I think the last couple of plates were to go on, and my pal Jamie, I could see inside the ribs of the vessel, and he had a sledgehammer in one hand, he's operating a pull lift with the other, pulling this plate into place the last little bit, and I just remember feeling this pride. I thought, we've grown up. You know, we've still probably 2 years of apprenticeship to go, but we're often working on our own at that point, and I thought, we're nearly men. Of course, we weren't nearly men. It would be another 20 years before we realised at that age you're only a kid. But, you know, that was the feeling we got. So Jamie's the thing I remember when I'm standing at the top of this slipway, and pride in him and the rest of us. And the other thing I remember when I'm here is there's a set of steps took you off the slipway up into the engineering shop, and you would look over slightly diagonally and you'd see Big Archie's office, the engineering foreman's office, you know. And I can still see him there behind his glass window, or probably perspex window, I guess, head down, trying to figure out where all this hydraulic pipe work was going to run in the engine room and all that sort of stuff. And Big Archie was phenomenal with the apprentices. He was really good with the apprentices. Huge respect for the man. I was lucky enough to bump into him in Campbelltown many years ago, and I was able to tell him that, thankfully, you know. But I remember my pride when Archie let me start installing the hydraulic pipe work on my own. Now, these fishing vessels had a lot of hydraulic pipe work. It was the lifeblood of the vessel, really. Winches, net drums, power blocks, all that sort of stuff. And it had to be perfect for Big Archie, because it was so visible. It was everywhere, and it was really like an advertisement for the vessel, you know. So he let me work on this myself, and I just bursting with pride at this, you know. But anyway, one day I was putting hydraulic pipe work, which was not really going to be seen again. It was under a walkway, and Archie come along and says, "I've nearly managed to do this, Archie." He says, "Yeah, take it out again." I said, "What for?" He says, "You haven't rounded off the corners of the brackets." I said, "But nobody's going to see it, doesn't matter. This is Campbelltown Shipyard." So I did, and I learned immediately it's better to do something right once than do it twice, you know. Learned that from him. The third person actually that always comes to mind when I'm standing in the engineering shop is wee Brishy, the charge hand. Now, he was always 100 miles an hour everywhere, all the time. But you know, when you're a young man, and I should mention me and Jamie, my pal I mentioned, you know, we're young men and suddenly found ourselves, you know, with money in our pockets, about 25, 29 pounds a week at that time. You know, and hijinks were had. You know, every weekend was a good one. Can't say too much because Jamie's a grandfather himself now. But, you know, we knew how to enjoy ourselves. And you turn up here on a Monday morning like a half-shut knife, you know, had a good weekend. And you're tired, you know, as young people do, I'm tired and all that kind of stuff. And then I'd watch wee Brishy, and he'd been lifting lobster pots in the morning in his little boat before he came here. He'd have been doing another day's work after he left here, you know, in the evening, you know. And I kind of, that work ethic, I was like, you know, if you're only doing 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day, you're doing pretty well. It was, you know, what I remembered for the rest of my life, you know. And then standing here next door to the engineering shop, and what was the old joiner's shop, I think about Archie and Dougie. The two joiners that really took me under their wing, both inside and outside the yard, you know, let me play darts with them and things like that. I was a very shy, quiet kid, you know. Now, Dougie left the yard, I think, before I did, but Archie's still around, you know. Now, I haven't seen him for a lot of years. If he sees this, he'll laugh at this. Last time I met him, we had a few refreshments, as we do, you know. And and I went back to Rona's mum and dad's and I vomited on their dog. So I think I'll keep it cool the next time I see Archie. So I should say that all 5 of these people were at our wedding, you know, nearly 40 years ago. I mean, Rona will kill me, I don't know how long we've been married, but there you go. So the last person I'd like to mention is, again, when I was a young apprentice, or I just finished my apprenticeship perhaps, I was stood at this end of the engineering shop, and right here was one of these 2-wheel grinding things, you know, grinding machines. The plinth for it is actually still here. So I was sharpening a drill, no eye protection on, and Jock, the big plating foreman, saw me. He was standing over to the right there, and he went, "Oh, whoa," tapped me on the shoulder. Now, Jock, I'm sorry I can't remember, but he'd either lost an eye or he'd lost the sight in an eye. I can't remember. And he patiently stood there and explained to me how difficult it was to only have the use of one eye, you know, depth perception and all that. As a result of what that man told me then, I never, ever did anything like that without eye protection, ever. Thank you. But honestly, I could go on and on. I mean, they're probably getting rain in the lens now. Mucka, the plater, whose domain was this end of the plate shop, whose speciality was taking grit and bits of metal filings out of people's eyes with the corner of a newspaper, you know, on and on. Oh, better get into shelter. So every year I come here, and I remember the Archies and the Dickies and the Tommies and the Willies and all of these people, you know, these great, great men that worked here. And you know what, if I can, I'll be coming here every year until the day I can't. So that's it, another great wee stay at Macranish Holiday Park.
That was lovely.
So rain kind of stopped play yesterday,
Yes,
didn't it?
aye.
It stopped me wandering about with a camera anyway, because it was howling it down. But what I thought we'd do is we'll say a wee bit more about Campbelltown as we drive through it here.
Yes.
But also, instead of going straight home to Inverness like we normally do, we're going to spend a night in a local campsite up there, because there are a couple of things that we'd like to show you that we've done to the van and we're going to do to the van. And also, we love this van, don't we?
Oh, definitely, yes.
You know, we spend nearly 6 months a year in it. 2 months at a time sometimes, you know, or usually 2 months
Yes.
at a time. Not enough to name it, obviously.
No,
Yeah,
well, I don't think we've ever named anything.
A few people have said, "What do you call your van?" And we like kind of, well, the van.
The van.
But there's one thing that just doesn't work, isn't there? I don't want to be negative, but I want to show you that thing, and I want to show you what we are proposing to do about it. Now, if you're a CV40 owner, one of these vans, you probably already know what I'm talking about, you know. And we'll crack on up the road here, and then we'll show you that later on. So the thing about Campbelltown is it's kind of hard to describe how unique it is, because it's not in your face, you know, is it?
No.
It's like if you come here for any length of time, you start to see these wee acts of friendliness and kindness continually, don't you?
Yes.
It's in the, if you go into a shop and you see the way that the customers and the person working there reacts to each other, out in the street, the way people stop and talk to each other. It's the way the bus driver talks to everybody who comes on and off, and you know, and the older people get a bit of preferential treatment sort of thing, rightly so. The guy who delivered your mum's messages, people have got time for each other.
Yeah.
And they've got a tolerance with each other as well, haven't they? And slowly you just start to think, this is the way life's supposed to be.
Yes. And also the shop, one of the wee shops will phone a taxi for you to take you home.
It's just, it's endless, and it's everywhere. Everywhere it is, you know. And then you think, well, why is this culture we knew 40 years ago still here?
Still here, aye.
Probably the same culture that was here 100 years ago. Because this isn't a village.
No, it's a town.
I think when we were here, the population was over 6,000. I'm just under 5 now, I think, you know. You know, it's not that remote. You know, you don't have to get a ferry to get here.
No.
The people are well travelled, you know.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people from here have been all around the world, worked and lived around the world and come back again. And they're well informed. It's not some sleepy backwater.
Oh, no.
But somehow that culture has stayed here, isn't it, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought long and hard about why that is, and the only conclusion I could come to is it's because the people of Campbelltown want it that way.
Yes.
Last night I was lucky enough to bump into Davy, who taught me how to form, bend and install the hydraulic pipework to Big Archie's satisfaction. Now, Davy was just a young man back then himself, and I won't say too much because I know this would embarrass him, you know, but he was a class act then and he's a class act now.
Yeah.
And it made my trip meeting him last night. Right, let's batter up this road and then
Yeah.
we'll get settled in the other campsite.
Yeah.
So a nice peaceful night in our tower. So here's the 2 or 3 wee things we wanted to mention. So when we come back from Spain, January, February in Spain, or if we're not there at the start of the season, we purify the water. Now, because we are nearly always in campsites, we don't fill the water tank 100 litres, so we're not carrying 100 litres of water everywhere. And we use a little foldable plastic container we bought on Amazon. Fits nicely in the back of the van, and we have this little sort of funnel and hose arrangement, which is just cut from an old hose. And we will put 4 of these 10 litre containers into the tank, so 40 litres. The first 10 litres basically fills the system, the water heater and the pipes, and then we've got 30 usable. Now, on our little gauges in the van, which are notoriously inaccurate, that 40 litres will put us with a sort of second bar lit up, and as soon as it drops to the first bar, we'll put another 10 litres in. So that's how we know how much water we've got in the van. So to purify it, all I'm doing now is filling that 10 litre container with water, putting in about 2.5 spoons of Puriclean powder. I pour that into the tank, run everything through the taps in the water heater by turning the taps on, flush the toilet. So basically that 10 litres that was in the tank is now all in the system. Leave it for a couple of hours, minimum, you can leave it as long as you like. And while that's happening, I'll fill up the water tank with another 30 litres of water. And all I do then is every time I use the taps, the first few times I'll let it run a bit longer. And that seems to work for us. It's quick, it's easy, and I'm going to do that twice a year now, again at the end of the season, because last year we had these really hot days, and when we came back to get the van, the water was a bit off. Drinking water, we don't drink from the water tank or anything like that. We've actually got a 2.2 litre container and fill it up in whatever the site tap is and just drink that. Even everywhere in Europe, the water's great. It's European quality. So the second thing I wanted to mention was this van still has its original lead acid battery in, leisure battery that is. It'll be 3 years old this year. They reckon they last from 3 to 5 years old. In my experience, at least, a leisure battery generally lasts closer to 5 years than 3 years. Now when it goes, we may put a lithium one in. I think the lithium batteries have come down to a price where it starts to make sense now. We're not off grid, we're on campsites. We don't need the benefits that a lithium battery gives you, really, so it'd be purely down to price for us really now. But I need to know when that battery, the current lead acid battery, starts to fail. That's my key thing now, and I want to make it last as long as I can. So I've got one of these Victron Smart Sense things, which I've fitted, easy to put on, sticks on the side of the battery, and the only information that gives us at the moment is the voltage in the battery and the temperature at the battery. But even that's useful, because it told me the solar panel was working okay. So the van sat for about a month in the middle of winter there, after we came home from Spain, because we were ill, and even at that there was 14.2 volts in the leisure battery. Solar panel's doing its job, but I've also got the Victron 7515 solar controller. And when I fit that, I need better weather, because we need to cover the solar panel. It needs to be not windy so it doesn't blow away and things. The Smart Sense will talk to that, and it will make sure that the battery gets its best charge based on the temperature, which is kind of important. But I'll also get more information out of the 7515, because we don't want to find out the battery's failing a week before we go to Europe or something. We need to know. So that was the second thing I wanted to show you. The third thing is the one problem we have with this van. We love it, but we have a problem with it. So I'm sure most people that have these eldest CV40s have had no problem with their heating at all. But I know a significant amount of people have had a problem, and we are one of them, or two of them. And now it has a whale underslung water heater and a separate whale underslung space heater, both run on gas and electric. Now at the moment the water heater's not too bad, but every time we stop I have to go under the sink, under the cooker actually, and I have to disconnect the cables to the water heater and then reconnect them for it to work. Now, minor inconvenience, you might think, why don't you get the dealer to fix it? Well, the problem is that it was fine until I put it to the dealer, and the reason it went to the dealer is because the space heater had failed. It failed after about 15 months. Now there's been continual problems with that, You'd try and turn it on and you get lockouts for no reason. It would tell you that there was no gas or the flue was blocked. It would take 3 attempts to light on gas, then you'd get a lockout, you'd have to clear the lockout. It just feels unreliable, you know. Oddly enough, it worked fine in Spain when the weather was good. The heating doesn't seem to like bad weather, which is a bit unfortunate obviously in the UK and Scotland. Now it failed, as I say, it failed after 15 months. Now we've got to drive 3 hours, the car or vehicle passenger, we've got to drive 3 hours to get to the dealer, and they mostly want to keep your van, always want to keep your van, so we've got to drive back, take 2 vehicles down and drive back. Now it kind of costs us about 150 quid every time to go up and down, you know. Hence the reason why I'm sticking with the water heater, having to plug and unplug it, because it'll save me 150 quid. Now as I say, the heating failed after 15 months from new. We were at the dealer twice, I think twice anyway, and we lost the use of the van for weeks and weeks, you know. In fact, we went to Europe with no heating, didn't we? Now we always carry a low wattage fan heater, you know, that you get and go outdoors, and that's because the heating is so unreliable. Now guess what, the heating has failed again. Once again the heating has failed. That's the space heater. Now what I'm going to do today and tomorrow is I'm going to phone around, see what the options are. I'm going to contact Whale first, but I'm seriously thinking about ditching that and putting a diesel heater in. Honestly, I've had enough of it. You can't have unreliable heating when you're travelling a lot, you know. So that's it, eh? You've not been in this one much, eh?
No.
So I think the next video we'll make is the one we really should have made now, which is a wee roundup of our 2 months in Spain, you know, but events kind of overtook us, so we'll do that next. So we've done that winter tour in Spain, winter long stay in Spain quite a few times, so I'll try and make it interesting. I'll use clips of the trip, and there's wee things in there that might be helpful to people, you know, just things we picked up over the years that kind of work and help. And then more Highland camping. I think over the next wee while we've got a big trip to Europe coming up later this year, and we'll be travelling a lot lighter, so we'll be trying different gear and things, you know, just to, it's not, you know, you obviously use different gear for a long stay when you're going to be in one place for weeks at a time, compared to touring, you know, so we'll be using different gear, so we'll do a bit of that as well. So anyway, is it time to say cheerio? You've not been in this at all, hardly, have you?
Hardly.
Aye, because down in Campbelltown, Rona's still got family there, you know, so you tend to visit them, don't you? And I get wandering about, talking a lot of rubbish about Shipyard. But honestly, I love going there, you know.
Oh, aye, it's a great place.
Yeah, and Campbelltown's a great place. But anyway, we'll say cheerio, or hello, to Cleo and Charlie. Enjoy. Take care.
Bye.
See you soon.